Okay, we're live. Hey, what's up, guys? This is John from Superperform Gamescast, but this is not a regular episode of the podcast, as I'm sure most of you have probably guessed. For anybody who follows me on Twitter at Mr. Megadev, you know that for the past week I've been kind of wanting to get a few guys together from the SDGC community and from the gaming community to talk about our anxiety and how it affects our daily lives, and I don't know, I guess some of the coping mechanisms that we use to try to deal with it on a daily basis. And some of us deal with it. I mean, it's really bad for some of us, and it's a widespread problem that doesn't get enough attention, especially in the gaming community. So that was kind of the idea of bringing people together. And this is something, it's not a regular thing we're going to do. For the next couple of weeks, we're gonna meet every Monday. Maybe the same guys here, maybe a different crew depending on who wants to come back and who wants to come on. But yeah, we're just here to unload and talk to you guys and talk to each other, and maybe find some common ground and learn a few new ways to deal with what we've been going through for most of our adult lives, if not longer. So without any further ado, you guys know who I am. Why don't we start with Chris, going down the, why don't we start with Chris? Chris, why don't you introduce yourself?
Hi, I'm Chris. I'm 28 years old. I've been a gamer for as long as I can remember. Fan of the podcast. I don't really listen to you guys live, but I'll listen, the day after.
Right. I appreciate that, man. I appreciate that.
Yeah,
it's weird. It's weird not having my regular crew on here. I'm like, oh, what's happening? Who are these people?
It's confusing to listen to you without like Doc and all the rest of them right now, like trying to and stuff.
Yeah, but it's good.
So,
it's good.
Yeah.
Okay, awesome. And Justin, why don't you say hi, man?
Yeah, my name is Justin. I've been in the gaming community for a long time in YouTube, on NeoGAF, etc. And I'm 33 years old, married, have a beautiful girl, and I have anxiety. Hello.
All right, and why don't we go to Strange?
Hey, I'm Agent Strange, or The Flash on Twitter. Basically just a NeoGAF bottom feeder and Twitter troll, nothing special in that area. And I've recently kind of discovered or am pursuing the possibility that I have anxiety and some other things as well. So.
Okay, well, you've come to the right place. We'll talk about that as well. And Kev, why don't you say hi and tell everybody who you are?
Hey, I'm Kevin, or Grissom Kev, as you probably know me on Twitter and GAF and everywhere else. I'm 23. I'm currently a college student studying computer science. And I've always been in love with video games and then occasionally making video games. So yeah, that's me.
All right, awesome. Thanks, dude. So that's that's our panel tonight. And I guess to kind of break the ice, I'll go ahead and I'll start first. And just real quick for everybody in the chat, for anybody watching, I know that I normally engage with the chat quite a bit. I think tonight we're going to take some questions from you guys. We'll answer what you want to answer, but I kind of want to keep the focus on our guests and myself to kind of keep it grounded and keep the talk about what we're all feeling. So it's not ignoring anybody. We will be addressing some questions from the chat if you do have them. Okay, so I'll go ahead and start first. And this is something that I've been like agonizing over for days, right? Like it's never an easy thing to talk about. But I'll get a little more in depth into it than I did in the article I wrote on the website. But I've dealt with anxiety for almost my entire life, really, and I couldn't really tell you where it started, right? Like I grew up in a very abusive household. My father was a violent alcoholic, and of course I've been to war several times. I deployed 7 times. I was wounded. I was part of the Second Battle of Fallujah, which is the bloodiest conflict in the entire Iraq War. And it's one of those things where I can't give you one moment where I like had that oh shit moment where I was like, I fucking have anxiety. It's just kind of always been like, Winston Churchill, everyone knows who Winston Churchill is. He suffered from anxiety his entire life, and he called it his black dog. Well, it was anxiety and depression, but he called it his black dog, and it followed him around everywhere. And that's really what mine is like. And mine manifests itself as severe health anxiety. I have generalized anxiety, but it's severe health anxiety for me. and I constantly think I'm sick, you know, like even though I'm not. I know I'm not. Like my subconscious mind wants me to feel that I am, even though the rational part of my brain tells me that I'm not. So as a result, I spend thousands of dollars on unnecessary medical bills just to be told the same thing over and over. You're fine. There's nothing wrong with you. Just in the past several years, I thought I've had various forms of cancer, heart attacks, diabetes, fucking glaucoma, macular degeneration, liver disease, ALS, MS, all kinds of shit. And of course, it's always the same, right? Like I'm fine, and the odds, as they say as Katniss would say, are ever in my favor, right? They're in all of our favor. I mean, otherwise, fuck, everybody'd be fucking dying of something. But that's kind of me. That's kind of how my anxiety manifests. I want to hear from some of you guys. We'll start with Chris. Chris, how does your anxiety present itself?
I have suffered since, ever since I was probably a teenager, honestly. And it started as me basically being diagnosed with like obsessive compulsive disorder. I'm very like obsessive guy. Like I'll obsess about small little meaningless details that mean nothing. But it manifests in like the little nitpicky things. Like I'll stay awake in the middle of the night and think like, oh, did I do that? Or do I have to talk to someone that I'm going to be uncomfortable with the next day or whatever? It'll manifest in these like small, minute ways that really shouldn't make any difference day to day. But like for me, it does for whatever reason. And I'm always like anxious about like, am I doing something wrong? Did I say something wrong? Does someone think of me a weird way or whatever, And I don't know why it manifests that way, but, I'm always like second guessing myself in that way, and it's really tough sometimes.
I know exactly what you mean, dude. I was diagnosed as mildly OCD myself, and alongside all the other smorgasbord of shit I deal with. Like if I turn my fucking expensive TV off, I have to make sure I turned it off like 5 different times. I fucking know I turned it off. It's like holy shit. Yeah. And I know it's crazy too. Like I'm doing it, and I'm like, what the fuck am I doing?
Yeah,
like, why am I doing this?
Like you're conscious of it, but you still do it anyway.
Yeah, it's compelling. Fucking. Yeah. Justin, what about you, man? Tell us a little bit about how your anxiety presents itself.
Well, mine started back in actually high school. Actually, I was going to high school. I had finished middle school and going to high school, and I was just absolutely terrified of it for some reason. And I was in a huge overcrowded high school, and I remember I started hyperventilating in my classroom. So they had to actually have students assist me to the nurse's office, and I actually had to drop out of high school at the time and go to an alternative school. It was really tough. And I would cry and have these outbursts to my parents, telling them I didn't want to go to that prison. I didn't want to go to, I didn't want to go to that evil place. It was just ridiculous. But the school I worked with, they helped me, and I got fairly back on track, and I graduated actually a year early, which was really good. And things were pretty good for a while in my life. And later I got my first like career type of job working in IT in 2004, and about 7 months later, so I was driving in my car and I felt pain in my chest, and I absolutely lost it. I almost crashed my car. An ambulance had to come take me to the hospital. I thought I was having a heart attack, and I was 21 at the time. Ridiculous to be thinking that, but that's what it is. And ever since then, that's probably how my anxiety has manifested the most. There are times where I will sit there and I'll just kind of really dread things like kind of like you with your health. And my first thing I go to is my heart for some reason. I'm always feeling my heart beating in my chest.
That's my big trigger.
I'll stand up, I get dizzy sometimes, and that freaks me out. And it's a lot of little things like that. And I think my most severeness from the thoughts on those is my heart. For whatever reason, I don't know. I mean, I was told my grandfather died of a massive heart attack my real grandfather before I was born. And I don't know if that's kind of stuck with me internally in the back of my head, because that's how this anxiety works. It's subconscious, on a subconscious level in the back of your mind. You're not even thinking of these things, and they're happening.
It's your body going to that flight or fight or fight or flight response. Yeah.
Yes, and so I've been dealing with it ever since then. 1998, 97, and then since then. And when the big attack happened, it's kind of that happens every once in a while. And as we've been talking on Twitter, it's been popping up again lately for seemingly unknown reasons. I'm waking up in the middle of the night, my heart's racing. I had to call the ambulance to come to my house. I'm sweating. I just can't calm down. And I was prescribed medicine to calm me down when those severely happen, because when they come on strong, especially the night terrors like that. And it sucks because I've had those similar panic attacks while I'm awake, and I can kind of know this is a panic attack. Let me breathe. But when you wake up with one like that, it's horrible, and you just you don't even know what caused it. So that's kind of how they come on with me. It's just it's either a really intense panic attack or like that, or it's just kind of a mild general, like I'm worried about my health, or I'm worried about going into a crowd somewhere, and it doesn't always happen. Sometimes I'm fine and I can go to a social event and I'm absolutely okay. Other times I go in a crowd and I'm like, I don't want to be here. I can't breathe. And it sucks because for me, it's very random, and I don't really, people are always like, what's your trigger? What's your trigger? I don't know. I don't know what my trigger is. So
that's the thing, man. Like sometimes these things they don't need a trigger, or the trigger is your subconscious,
Yeah.
Like I've been going through fucking CBT for like over a year now. It's cognitive behavior therapy. Right. And like, from what my psych tells me, he's like, look, there's no fucking rhyme or reason for any of this shit, right? Yeah. Like it's just your fucking brain. Like it just isn't starting to go away. It's basically almost your brain saying, hey, don't forget about me, and hey, don't forget about me, and oh shit, you're forgetting about me. So here's some fucking heart palpitations, right?
Yeah.
Okay, so do you want to
worry about or whatever?
Yeah, and the interesting thing is it does happen. I noticed they say it happens during stressful times in your life, and for a while there I was working out a lot, and I was actually in the best shape of my life a few years back, and then I went to Afghanistan for contracting work, and I had to come home 3 months later to get surgery for my gallbladder. So I came home during that time. I found out my girlfriend was cheating on me. All this kind of stuff happened. I was having my first surgery. I went back, and ever since then it kicked into overdrive. And I think it was due to the stress from the surgery, the girlfriend, being in Afghanistan in general. And I was doing exercise to try, because they say exercise helps you fight your anxieties and helps you release that stress. But I was getting to the point where I was running on a treadmill, and I was freaking out on the treadmill, like literally, like I couldn't run anymore. And I used to run a lot, and that's a trigger. If I start to run sometimes, I have to stop, and it just freaks me out. So it sucks because it prevents me from exercising sometimes. And I hate that. So yeah, that's it in a nutshell.
So there's something, and before we get to Flash, Flash, have you gone yet?
No, but
okay.
Finish waiting.
Okay, really, real quick before we get to Flash, I actually asked this question for anybody in the chat who may be suffering from heart palps, or from anybody here. I actually got a response from a retired doctor. I sent it to you, Justin. But I want to read it for you guys after we kind of get to the rest of this. So we'll come back to that. Flash, why don't you talk about how your anxiety manifests itself?
As I mentioned earlier, like this is just something that I've kind of discovered and pursuing. How do I want to say this? I have begun a journey to discover like aspects of my personality and my psyche. So I'm 2 weeks into counseling. Which has been going very well. And my anxiety manifests itself more in the kind of how I see myself fit with the rest of the world, with people that I know, with strangers. So I'm very much an introvert. I'm pretty shy. And I used to say, I don't, it's not that I dislike people. It's just that I'm not a people person. But I think it's more accurate that I just don't like other people, and I'm very self-conscious. Like I'm very self-conscious of myself. I think about what they think of me, and then I think about what I should think about what they're thinking, and it goes back and forth and flip-flop, and it's made me very indecisive, kind of career-wise and job-wise. So. Like I'm struggling in that aspect because I'm just I'm overwhelmed with trying to figure out how do I want to apply myself in life. And so I'm at a point now where I'm going to see someone to like figure out like, hey, am I just being a little neurotic and just thinking a little too much in my head, or do I actually have something going on? Because I do have, I have been diagnosed with ADHD. I got diagnosed with that when I was a kid, and people who have that can, there are things that can lead them towards being, more depressed or more anxious and so on and so forth. So that's kind of where I'm coming from.
Okay, well, I wish I could say welcome to the club.
Yeah.
Not a club that I really want to welcome you to, but hey, you're here now. So, Kev, you haven't gone yet, right? Have you gone?
Yeah. Not yet.
Okay, go ahead. Let's hear it, man.
So it's tough for me to acknowledge this because I don't think I've ever actually directly admitted this to anybody. But what I think I most likely could say what I have is body dysmorphic disorder. So my anxiety comes from my belief that other people are constantly judging my appearance. So that has led to me failing my first attempt at college, where I would see myself in the mirror and be like, okay, this is terrible. You can't let people see you like this. And then, just like everyone else has described, you get that kind of panic attack, like there's like a ton of bricks on your chest and you can't breathe. And my way out of it is just by not leaving my room. And, it started as like, well, maybe I do it, once every couple weeks. And then eventually I'm just never leaving my room because I'm terrified of the thought of people just looking at me.
It's gonna be fucking tough.
Yeah, it's been hard for me to deal with. Like, I actually made a point of setting up my webcam for this just to say, like, yeah, like I do have the strength to let people look at me while I'm talking about something like this.
That's what I'm talking about, man.
But yeah, I went to counseling for 6 months about this, and one of the things I learned is, just like was already mentioned, how completely irrational all of this can feel. Like, I know for a fact that people aren't judging me the way I think they are. I can ask them and say, like, did you notice this thing that I think is wrong with myself? And the answer is always no. Like, I have this awareness that what I'm feeling is not based in reality. And yet, sometimes I still feel like I can't fight it.
Yeah, no, I know exactly what you mean. And, it's one of those things where, like I have said, and like you've said, and like everybody has said, I mean, it's nothing that you can control, right? Like, so, what I have learned over the years is not so much to try to control it, but to try to own it. You know what I mean? Because, I mean, like it or not, when I first went to my psychologist, he sat me down in a chair, super nice guy. And he said, John, what do you want out of this? Like, what do you want to get out of this? And I said, well, truth be told, I want you to cure me. I want you to make this call. I want you to help me get rid of this, make it go away, do whatever kind of magic you got to do. And he says, well, get ready for disappointment because it's never going away. He said, this is something you're going to have the rest of your life. Now, what if I told you that I could make it 80% better? I said, you know what? I can live with that. And so that's kind of the lesson that I've taught myself is like it or not, this is part of who I am. And rather than try to destroy it or deny it, I'm going to embrace it and use that in order to effect a positive change. Like, for example, I wrote my article last week. I left work early on Tuesday at like 2:30 because I stood up and like I had just a massive fucking vertigo attack as I was walking. I was like, holy shit. And it fucking freaked me out, right? Like, it freaked me out. And so I was walking to my car, and, I may or may not have smoked a shitload of pot when I was a teenager, right? So I'm walking out of my car, and I was like, yeah, it's no big deal. It's no big deal. I'm just stoned, man. Like, I'm just stoned. It's all it is. I feel like a fucking teenager again. Woo! Didn't really fucking work, but the whole point is to try to put a positive face on something like this, right? Like, and it's still something that I'm trying to mess with, and still something I'm trying to, I don't know, maybe try to rewire my brain a little bit. But for everybody dealing with heart palpitations, so like Justin said, that's his big trigger. That's my big trigger too. And for everybody in chat who's dealing with heart palps, I have something that I want to read to you guys. I pulled it up just for you. So a while back, I post on the anxiety forums quite often. You can find me on there. I won't say my username out loud because it has my last name. But if you want to DM me on Twitter, I'll tell you who I am on there. You can always reach out to me. But I posted about heart palpitations and the fact that I was constantly getting them. And I'm a really fit guy, and so I was like, what's wrong with me, right? Well, I had a doctor. There's a doctor out there named Dr. Rutherford Rain, very, very smart guy. He's a retired guy. And he wrote me this in response to my heart palpitations, and I wanted to share it with you guys. He said, palpitation events of the type you are experiencing during exercise are no different in classification than those being experienced at rest or any other point. Again, I'm trying with all dispatch to get you and others here to turn away from your beliefs that these events are being produced by some kind of underlying disease. The problem is that the only resources you're retrieving from your internet search have to do with pathological arrhythmias, and therefore, you make all attempts to bring equality and similarity between your symptoms and those of pathological variants. At some point, you are going to have to face the truth and the medical facts regarding the specific type of palpitation event. Your failure to do so will forever hold you from moving forward with your life. No matter what characteristics arise with these events, no matter how frequent, how intense, whether pounding, fluttering, skipping, perceived absence of a heartbeat, or other manifestation, these palpitations are forever harmless. They cannot cause a heart attack or damage the heart in any way. They cannot cause you to suddenly drop dead of all things because they are in all aspects harmless due to the actual underlying physiology which produces them. Now, this is the important part right here. Now, if you're unwilling to take the time to sit yourself down to work toward gaining the proper understanding concerning these palpitations and their true nature, then there's nothing I can do to help you. It is felt by some that it's more safe to believe them to be dangerous and simply use this form for reassurance from irrational fears. Well, I am considered to be advanced in age and growing older as the years pass since this forum was created. I won't be around here forever. You need to face yourself, not some voice from a forum, and produce the discipline necessary to gain a firm understanding about these palpitations. I have spoken ad nauseum in hundreds of threads about the true nature of pathological arrhythmia whatsoever. I have explained in detail what causes your palpitation events to occur in the furthest extent of their inability to harm you in any way. And then he goes on to say, this example depicts the compelling nature of anxiety and its ability to avoid the truth in favor of irrational fear. And that is the most important sentence right there. Something that everybody in chat needs to learn, and I need to learn, and everybody here needs to learn, is that these physical responses that we have, whether they be heart palpitations or night terrors or sweats or anything, dizziness, vertigo, this is a result of our subconscious mind immediately leaping into fight or flight response. And I think the important thing for all of us, and you guys tell me what you think, I want to throw it out to you guys after this, is, for me, I think the big realization came when I'm starting to think that I'm not even afraid of, it's not fear of being sick, right? Because like right now, not to make me sound like a badass or anything, but if we were invaded right now, I could pick up a weapon and run outside right now and go to war. No fear at all. Because I know there's two possible outcomes. I'm either going to live or I'm going to die. That's it. That's it. I think what I'm really afraid of is the unknown. I think I'm afraid of things that I can't control, and that manifests itself as health anxiety for me. But I want to know what you guys think. Has anybody here actually looked at their anxiety and thought, I fucking hell, I think this is where it's coming from? Like what is your trigger? Like what is it a trigger for you guys?
I think it's 100% fear of the unknown for me too. Like I just don't know if this is gonna sound really weird, but like it's that I don't know if I'm like doing the right thing, and that manifests like maybe with my life, maybe with the day to day. But like, am I even like, like you said, like when you have like a health thing, like if you don't address it, maybe like that's going to be really bad. And like, it's that what if like feeling, you know what I mean? Like, what if I don't notice this? What if I don't go to the doctor here? What if I don't address this? Like, is my life going to just be completely, in ruins after that? And that's like, I'm constantly thinking about those what if scenarios, and those like the fear of like, what's going to happen tomorrow,
Yeah, I know. And that makes perfect sense. And that's the same thing that happens to me. Somebody else take a stab at it. What about the rest of you guys?
I'll go for it.
Let's hear it.
Yeah. So I think like mine comes from fear of judgment, like not specifically judgment of my appearance, even though that's like what I tend to attribute it to. But like also fear of judgment of like failure or not meeting people's expectations. So like I think the way that connects to how I feel about my appearance is that I can't help but compare myself to other people, like in every aspect. And like the most immediate and obvious thing about a person, if if you're just walking around in public, is what they look like. So whenever I see someone who I believe is like closer to perfect in appearance than I am, then I immediately become jealous of them. And then I start to think about what they're thinking about me when they're looking at me, because, clearly they must be, because I'm doing the same to them. And of course, that's not actually the case. But I think where I get that from is there were very high expectations placed on me during my childhood. Both of my parents are teachers, and a lot of my value at home came from my performance in school. And so anytime that I wasn't doing well in school, that would be reflected in how I was treated by my family. And so as I started to like build this irrational belief that my value to everyone depends on how I compare to them or how I meet their expectations or not, then I sort of like built that into the most immediate and obvious thing that people can expect about a person, which is what they see when they look at them.
And the thing is, dude, is that like I don't like say, and that's why I'm glad you're here, Kev, because like anxiety manifests itself for different people in different ways, right? Like for me, like for guys like me and Justin, it's a lot of health bullshit. Chris is OCD. Strange is just fucking. He's just unfortunately finding his anxiety and figuring out what triggers him, and yours is what you just described. And it really, like, what this goes to show is that it's all, think of it as like, a six-sided die, and every side is just shitty. I mean, no matter where the die rolls, it's crap, it's garbage, right? But like, I think like the important thing that we all need to remember, and people in chat need to remember, is that, and really the whole point of this podcast is to show people that, it's okay to talk about it, and it's not, and it's okay. It's okay to get it out there. We shouldn't be ashamed of this. We need to talk about this. I mean, the only way we're going to beat it is by talking about it and confronting it directly. And if we can do that and show people that they're not alone, I mean, fuck. After I wrote that article, I mean, there were so many fucking people who said, wow, holy shit, I've got fucking anxiety too, and this is how I have it. Justin, hearing you talk, dude, is like, it's like you're talking about me. I have experienced everything you have gone through my entire life. Everything. I have been right there with you every step of the way. So to hear you talk about this fucking your health anxiety, it's like looking in a fucking mirror with a cactar in it. Like it's unbelievable. It's insane.
Well, and talking about the whole like how things start for people, I can also relate to Kevin, because this is kind of weird, and I haven't heard many people bring this up in the past, but my anxiety manifested itself first in high school, and it involved self-image. I was always a bigger, heavier child. And I was heavy set, and I always thought people were laughing at me and making fun of me. And I would walk by some people and they'd laugh, and I would immediately think they're laughing at me. It didn't matter if they were laughing at a joke. It didn't matter if they were talking about something else completely different. I would think it was always about me. And that was how my anxiety first manifested. And I've lost a lot of weight. Like if you saw my prom picture, it's ridiculous. Like I probably weighed close to 260 pounds. I've lost a lot of weight, and I still will look in the mirror sometimes and see this really extremely overweight person. So I can understand the body dysmorphic disorder or my thought process, and that's how my anxiety started. But whenever I had that crash, or almost had that crash in my car, that's when my health anxiety with my heart started, and then it kind of steamrolled. So anxieties can change, I think, in some people as well, and it's permanently now housed with this health issue. So I still have moments like that, but that's kind of where mine comes from and how it's kind of morphed. And you're right, it's not something we should be ashamed to talk about. And when I first had this problem, my parents looked at me like I was nuts, because they didn't know what anxiety was. They didn't know why I was freaking out, and it was very new to them. But I went to counselor, and they explained it to him. And they, over the years, they've really become very supporting of me because they understand and they know I have a problem, and they know I'm going to probably deal with it the rest of my life, like you said. So it's a battle I'm fighting, and it has its really bad times, but it has its moments of where I get a calmness for a while. But like you said, you just got to keep fighting it and kind of own it. It's just those moments where it really strikes out and hits you hard that you got to really try to remind yourself that you're okay and everything's going to be all right.
Yeah, like my dad just called me a pussy about it. He's like, stop being such a pussy. Crying is for sissies and little girls, and so are video games. And speaking of, all right, he didn't sound like that, but that's what.
Yeah.
I don't know why. I don't know why I did that accent. It was
my dad was similar in that regard at the start, so I understand.
But what I want, speaking of video games, because this is a video game podcast, I know anybody joining us is like, where's the video games at? I think this is video games. So what I'd like to do is kind of talk about, because video games for me are a huge coping mechanism, and they have been, excuse me, ever since my childhood, and it sounds dopey to say to some people, but I don't fucking care. Video games help me cope. I love video games. I love them. I mean, if I had to list off a bunch of shit that was important to me, number one would be my wife and kid, number two would be hockey, and number three would be video games. Number two would be video games, and number three would be hockey. But like, and so like, I want to ask you guys how games help you cope, and I'll just throw out real quick that I guess like the first game that really helped me kind of deal with what I was going through and with what I am going through was, it had to be Final Fantasy VI. Or Final Fantasy III as I knew it back then. The purple box and the Moogle in the front leaning on a sword. Seeing that Cactuar picture and Justin's picture just makes me smile. But that was really the first, and that's really when things got really bad. It's like when Final Fantasy VI came out, I was 13 going on 14. And for me, that was about the time in my life where like things were at an all-time low, right? Like I wasn't getting along well at school. I was really overweight. I didn't have a lot of friends, and of course, after all that, I had to come home to my dad throwing me down the stairs and kicking me in the stomach and fucking smashing my glasses on my face and calling me a cocksucker and all kinds of shit, right? Like I had to do like my dad was a real character. But luckily, he never threw out my video games. He never threw out my Super Nintendo. He never threw out the games that my mom would buy me. And I begged for Final Fantasy VI, and I took it. I got it for Christmas. Popped it in Super Nintendo, and I had never ever experienced anything like that before. Right, like that was my first experience with an actual no bullshit meaningful storyline in a game. Right, and I remember, just getting so engrossed in the story and the struggle between the Returners and the Empire that every time I was in the middle of a beatdown for my dad, I would think to myself, that's fine. He can do what he wants. Let him do his thing. 10 minutes will be over, and I can escape. I can get to my room, and I can hook up with Tara and Locke and Edgar again, and it'll be all right. Like I almost, in a weird way, I almost looked at them as friends, because they helped me get through a very difficult part of my life. And it meant so much to me that as soon as I finished it, I started a new game, just played it all over again. So Final Fantasy VI was one of those games that it came along. It wasn't even so much the game, even it was the right thing at the right time, if that makes any sense. Like it's almost like I didn't pick it; the game picked me. You know what I mean? The Returners were the underdogs, and the struggle against Kefka, and that really resonated with me because I viewed myself as kind of the Returners and kind of my dad as the Empire or Kefka. I had a really weird mind growing up as a kid, but yeah, and then things just kind of ballooned from there. I was already a huge gamer, but that was really what introduced me to the idea that games can be an escape and a form of therapy as well as entertainment. And so I want to start with Chris. How have games helped you cope with what you've dealt with?
It's interesting you use the word escape because that I think is like my number one. Like when I was a kid, when I was dealing with, I wasn't a very popular kid at school. I didn't have a lot of friends. I had a lot of anxiety I had a lot of random panic attacks for no reason. I had a lot of health issues when I was younger. I had scoliosis throughout my teenage years, which constantly in pain. So like a lot of my life as a kid was just like constantly worrying about, you know, where am I going? What's coming next? Like what's going to hit me tomorrow that's going to be shitty, you know? But for me, a huge thing in my childhood was when I discovered like RPGs. Like that was like a huge thing. And it happened, I think, it's funny you said Final Fantasy VI. For me, it was Final Fantasy VII. And that was like my escape, you know? And I could get away from basically all the shitty stuff that's going on in my life. I could forget about tomorrow. I can forget about, you know, my anxiety of what's happening right now. And I could just live in this world for a couple hours. And then it kind of becomes almost like, you know, and people always say like, escapism's not good. Like, well, yeah, it's great sometimes. Like, it's fantastic because you have the chance to to look forward to, you know, getting that chance the next day. And you have a reason to like get up and be like, oh, I'm going to have to get through this shitty day. But at the end of the day, I can go home and I can play this game for a couple hours and I can have a good time and I can forget about all that crap, you know? And for me, that's like, it's not like a reason to live, but it almost is like, you know, it's like a reason to like, okay, there's a light at the end of the tunnel. Like I can still do this. I have this aspect of life that I enjoy, that I can escape into and forget about everything else, you know? And for me, like that happened with RPGs first and foremost. Like it's just this world you can just get lost in and has nothing to do with your crappy life. You know, it's nothing to do with your anxiety at the moment. So that's how they've helped me, and they've helped me ever since. And that's probably where I always liked games when I was like younger, but when I hit like teenage years, like, and I discovered, you know, engrossing story experiences in games, like, that's really where I became like, you know, like a lover of video games. And like, you know, that's really started my obsession with them, you know, in the medium.
Video games are the best.
Yeah, they really are. They
really are the best. I fucking love
and,
video.
And they can get you through stuff that, you know, is shitty, you know. They give you a reason to be like, oh, and they kind of give you a milestone. Like, even like as a kid, I remember like really excited when Final Fantasy VIII was coming out in a few months, even though I don't really like that game that
I was
much.
gonna say,
like, looking back,
it came out, and you're like, the draw system sucks, and there's a bunch of teenagers, and
right. But like looking back, I like looked forward to that so much, and it gave me like that like reason to like, oh, at least that game's coming out in a few months, you know, kind of thing. So.
All right, no, dude, that's fucking awesome, man. Thanks for sharing that. Let's go to Flash. I want to kind of move over to you, man. How have you know, like, because I know out of all of us here, you're kind of just learning to deal or cope with your kind of emerging anxiety, I guess. And so, if video games haven't been an escape for you, like. Because I don't know, it's hard to gauge because I don't know how far along you are. So, you know,
well, they've always been like my go-to thing to de-stress and everything. Like when I'm done doing homework for the day when I was younger, or college work or anything like that. Like go back to my room and just relax, play some games, kind of. Use that as an opportunity to kind of subconsciously process things that happened throughout the day. So they've always been there for me in that aspect. But it really only became relevant in that scenario when I started college, because previously I had lived overseas my whole life. That's where I grew up, and so I didn't have access to new consoles or new games or anything like that. So it's only been in the past couple of years that I've kind of found peace, solace, fulfillment, you know, fun, whatever you want to, whatever adjective you want to use in video games. So, yeah.
Dude, that's fucking awesome. Thanks for sharing that, man. God, this is some good shit. This is pretty amazing. Let's go to
I do what I can.
No, dude, this is great. This is exactly what I was hoping for. Kev, let's go to you, man.
All right, gave me some time to think about this answer.
There you go.
I think the thing that helps me the most with playing games is being able to role play in a way where the thing that about me that's changing isn't who I am or my personality, but my appearance. So something that I have a tendency to do is really, really obsess over the appearance of the character that I'm playing as, where I could spend, up to hours in a character creator, not necessarily creating an improved version of myself, but just whatever this idea I have in my head of what a perfect looking person would look like regardless of gender. Like, I'll make male or female characters, just like someone who I wish I could look like, and then I get to inhabit that body for the length of time I'm playing the game. So like, as an example, something like the Mass Effect series, I'm not worried about the story or what choices I get to make. I'm only interested in being the exact me that I am in real life, but just I get to look like how I choose. So I think, like, I don't know, I don't really think of it as a bad thing to do that. I guess it's like, it helps me deal with it. Sure, I feel like maybe some people would criticize the fact that I obsess so much over the appearance of my characters, and that I need them to be perfect so that when I am them, I can be this perfect appearance that I wish I was. And then like that, taking it a step further, when I'm playing games online, now it's not just that I get to be that person I wish I could be, but also I get to interact with people through this extra barrier where the appearance of me that they know is the one that I want them to see and not the one that I am. Where again, I'm still just myself. I still try to put as much of the real me in that person that I am online, just without the part of what I look like.
Dude, that's fucking awesome. That's fucking awesome, man. Seriously. Dude, thank you for sharing that, because I know, especially being on camera, that was probably really difficult.
Thank you.
We all appreciate that, man.
Yeah, that was good.
Justin, what about you, man?
Oh, okay. Well, obviously I have a cactar in my picture, and we've had a couple of Final Fantasy mentions.
Clearly, you're going to
There's
talk
a theme.
Yeah, and I know you guys are just bashing on Final Fantasy VIII here, but that was probably a huge thing for me. I was probably emo-y, angsty myself at the time in high school. But that said, I just want to be clear. I really like Final Fantasy VII. Also, I'm not one of the only one can be better than the other. So I'm not that person. But I have a couple answers for this one, and gaming has always been a part of my life, like all of you. And I grew up playing Nintendo. I remember my dad almost wanted to beat my ass because when I was 5 years old, he caught me staying up late at night to play Punch-Out. Like all the lights went out in the hallway, and I was like, I'm gonna sneak playing this. I'm 5 years old. I'm the smartest kid ever.
Hell yeah.
And that door flew open, and he's like, "What the hell are you doing?" And I jumped back in there. And he goes, "You ever do this again? I'm taking your Nintendo away." And I never did it again. But anyway, so my stuff started manifesting in high school, and that's kind of when things of that nature really started to play. Even though they'd been a part of my life always, they were taking on a new meaning then. So yeah, for me, Final Fantasy VIII was a huge thing. It really just took me to this cool sci-fi world with these characters and these teenagers who I was feeling like, well, I'm a teenager and they're teenagers, and bada bing, bada boom. And it held, that series in general holds a special place in my heart, even still to this day. But there's other games that hold special places for when I was experiencing other severe anxiety attacks. So like when I was going through the big heart attack scare stuff when they first happened, Gears of War had come out a little bit after, and I got really obsessed into Gears of War, and that actually helped me kind of just kind of get my aggression out and take these locust bad guys out, and it was graphic and really in your face. Another game when I was in Afghanistan and I was having these bouts of anxiety really bad, Skyrim really took me to a whole new world.
Yeah.
Skyrim really just brought everything and maybe just like level out, and I just got lost in that game. And I think the first week it took like when I would get games over there, it would take like 2 weeks after release. So by the time I got them, everybody was like either done talking about them or whatever. So when I got Skyrim, I was like, I just dived into it and played like 80 plus hours, if not within the first week or two. And it really helped. And another one, this is interesting, is I live in Arizona. I live near the town of Tombstone, Arizona, like within driving distance, pretty quick. So Arizona and the Old West is kind of like really staple of my childhood and growing up. So even though it had already been released about a year or so prior, I played Red Dead Redemption to completion while I
knew that's what you were going to say.
Yeah.
Yeah.
and you know, it reminded me of home, and it was such a calming thing that a game could give me that sense of familiarity with my home. That it's not, you know, that, and no other game's done that, because obviously of the area and the time frame and the period and all that, and then where I live. But I mean, they fucking nailed the sunset deserts here in Arizona and the western feel and everything. So it just, again, it was just, these games all came at various times in my life and just really leveled me out. And there's been multiple games also that I could add on, but I think the point I'm just trying to make is that for me, gaming has taken on that. And when the shit gets real, gets tough, there's certain games that resonate and really just kind of help me, and they do take you away from that pain or that worry. And for me, when my mind wanders, that's when, especially when I'm having these attacks, because usually when I get one, they steamroll for a while. It's like I get one really bad one, and then for the next 3 to 4 weeks, I'm experiencing a lot of panic attacks, and then they kind of subside on and off lightly and light episodes. So these games help me go away into that world. My wife is very supporting of my gaming habit. She knows how much they help me relax and to de-stress. So she's always an advocate of, you know, do you want to play a game tonight? Or how you feeling? So I really appreciate that with her. You know, I love her for it. She is understanding, and that's just what games do for me. They're a great tool. And I don't think there's anything bad with getting lost in a gaming world. If you start ignoring all responsibilities, don't shower, don't go out, don't do anything, don't take care of yourself, yeah, that can be a problem. And that's all like its own set of issues. But as just an escapism, gaming is one of my favorite things. It's above movies for me. It's above music. Yep. It is like when a new game gets announced that I'm super pumped for or blows me, I scream. I freaking, like, we were watching E3, I think it was, when they announced Psychonauts 2, Psychonauts is another huge game I absolutely fell in love with. When they announced that off their little Kickstarter thing, I jumped and screamed, and my wife was like, "What's going on? What's going on?"
Oh yeah, no.
You know, so
if they were to announce a sequel to Chrono Trigger, I would be in tears.
Oh God, yeah.
I would be in tears.
That's another amazing one. Yeah. So yeah, I love video games. I can't get enough of them. That's kind of why I'm an advocate, where every time I see people really complaining about video games, I'm like, I just shake my head, because I'm like, man, you guys don't even know.
You know, this has been a really, really just completely enlightening conversation. And, you know, and I'm glad we did this, and I'm really thankful for you guys to agree to come on and do this. And one thing I wanted to say was two things, really. One, I think, you know, because I had been like trying to figure out why exactly I wanted to kind of have this conversation with fellow anxiety sufferers, right? Because, you know, it's like, well, I know everything I'm dealing with, right? Like, I'm familiar with it. Why do I need to talk about it, right? Like, what's the point of talking about it on the air? What's the point of using the, you know, our YouTube channel as kind of a vehicle to talk about this? But I think ultimately, like, after talking to you guys and seeing all the love in chat, like, I think the point is to remind people who suffer as we do, that you're not alone. You know, if you have heart palpitations, you're not alone. You know, if you stand up, if you get dizzy when you stand up, you're not alone. If you wake up in the middle of the night in fear of nothing, you're not alone. You know, if you're constantly worried about getting sick, you're not alone. You know, if you're worried about the things that you can't see or can't do anything about, you're not alone. None of you are alone, and none of us are alone. I'm not alone. Justin, you're not alone. Flash, you're not alone. Kev, you're not alone. Chris, you're not alone. And everybody in chat suffering from anxiety. I know we've got people out there. Shane, you're not alone. Al, you're not alone. Matt, Flunky, you guys aren't alone. We have to remember that. We have to stick by each other. And, you know, it's not just – video games are great. I love video games. They're one of the most important things in my life. And I don't give a shit when anybody thinks about me saying that. They are one of the most important things in my life. But what is even more important to me is guys like you talking about this, helping me remember that even at my darkest hour, I'm not going through this alone. And sometimes it feels so lonely to go through this because you always feel like, it makes you feel like the only person in the world who's dealing with these issues, but what we all have to remember is that we're not. We are all one big family. I'm not talking about gaming. I'm talking about this right here. Everything that we've gone through and everything that we're currently going through together and we'll continue to go through together. We have to remember that we have each other to lean on. And that's important. It's more important than games. And I guess I'll kind of close by sharing a coping mechanism that I use that actually doesn't have to do with video games. And I wrote about this in the article that I wrote on the website, but I know a lot of people probably didn't read it because, it's not like it's IGN or anything. So what I wanted to do was tell you guys what I do to cope and then not have anybody copy that because I think everybody should find their own thing, but find that one thing that you have and keep it close. And it can be anything can help you read, whatever. And I'll just give you an example. When I was in Iraq in 2004, it was my first deployment. Excuse me. And I'd been there for about maybe 3 months, maybe 4. I don't know. Time kind of flies when you're at war. And we were in Mahmoudiya, which is about maybe 10 miles south of Fallujah. And, we were in this chicken factory, basically, just processing chickens. And I was up on the roof and we were taking a lot of indirect fire every day. So we were walking around in flak and Kevlar and, just never know when the mortar rounds were going to come in. I'd been there for 3 or 4 months and I had almost forgotten what civilian life was like at that point, right? Like I just wasn't even thinking about it. And I was a smoker back then. So I'd gone up to the roof. It was about maybe 9 o'clock at night. And I had all my gear on. I had my rifle next to me on the wall. And I just sit there, smoking a cigarette, looking up at the sky. And the crazy thing about Iraq or just the Middle East in general is that Arab nights are beautiful. They're absolutely beautiful, right? Because there's not a lot of light on the ground at night. So you could see the stars for fucking miles. And it was such a crazy contradiction of what was happening on the ground. So that would be my routine. I would go outside. I would look up at night at the sky at night. I would smoke. And I would just kind of empty my mind, right? So one night I'm up there smoking and something catches my eye. And I'm looking up and I'm like, what the fuck is that? And I see this little blinking light. And I realized it was a plane. It was a commercial jetliner. You never saw those flying over Iraq. Or maybe you did and I just had forgotten to look for them, right? I'm still not sure. But I saw this plane flying over and it was the first civilian thing I had seen since I had been to war. And I was just absolutely fucking hypnotized. I watched that thing. I forgot my cigarette was there. Like it burned all the way down to the butt. I just stopped smoking. I was just staring at it. And I followed it until I couldn't see anymore. And then I stood up and I ran to the end of the building until I could see it, so I could see it some more, and then it was gone. It was gone. The whole thing lasted about maybe like 5 minutes, right? Maybe a little longer. And I was thinking to myself the whole time, who's on that plane? Where are they going? Where are they coming from? What are they thinking about? What are they doing up there? Do they have any idea what's happening on the ground right below them? Do they have any idea that right at this very minute, a young Marine at war could be looking up at them, watching where they're going and wondering? And it reminded me that in that moment, no matter how far away from home I was, the rest of the world wasn't as far away as I thought it was. And for the first time in 4 months, I felt human again. And it reminded me. So now, that was in 2004. Now, 12 years later, I'm 36 years old. Right? I'm not a 23, 24-year-old Lance Corporal in Iraq anymore. But every time when things get heavy, which is often, at night, I'll go outside, I'll grab a drink, I'll sit outside, and I'll look for a plane in the sky. And we kind of live in the middle of nowhere, so they're easy to find. And when I find one, I'll watch it. And I'll sip my drink until I can't see anymore. And in that moment, I feel human again. And it makes me realize that no matter how bad things are for me, or no matter how alone I might feel in that moment, the rest of the world still isn't as far away as I think it is. And I would highly recommend that everybody here and everybody in chat find something that captures you. Find anything. It doesn't matter what it is. Nothing's too small. Nothing's too big. Nothing's too insignificant. Find something that reminds you that you are human and that there's nothing wrong with you and that you're not alone and that the rest of the world is not as far away as you think it is. So I highly recommend everybody go find your plane. I guess is the best way I can put it. We've been going for about an hour here. Pretty deep conversation, and I know some of you guys got to go. So what I want to do real quick is thank each one of you personally. Chris, thank you so much for coming on and talking, man. I know it wasn't easy, but hopefully this helped a little bit.
Yeah, thanks for having me. This was great.
And
Really
Justin, absolutely, dude. Yeah, no, dude, this has been fucking phenomenal. And Justin, dude, you know, like I've said it before and I'll say it again. You know, you and I share we're in a kind of a unique position that we share the same type of anxiety. So listening to you talk, it's like looking in a fucking mirror, man. It's like reading a book about my own life. So thank you so much for giving me that.
Thank you.
And sharing your experiences with us, man. Seriously.
Yeah, thank you. And I find it kind of ironic, real quick, I just want to say, you're talking about the plane. When I was in Afghanistan, the thing I used to look at was the moon because I knew that my parents and my friends and my family would also be looking at that same moon. So that was kind of like my go-to when I was over there. So I can totally understand.
Yeah, dude, you gotta find it. You gotta find what it doesn't find. Kev, I know, especially for you, being on camera was hard tonight. That must have been a challenge for you. I want to thank you for coming on and kind of showing your face in the world and you know, like, honestly, dude, like, look at it as not even showing us, but showing yourself that there's nothing to be afraid of and there's nothing to be ashamed of. You know, so thank you for sharing that with us and thank you for sharing yourself with us. We all appreciate that.
Yeah, I wanted to say thank you to you as well. I spend a lot of time getting used to telling people that they don't understand what it feels like to be me, but even if not everybody suffers for the same reasons, you guys clearly do understand what it feels like. And like just as some extra thing that I do to try to deal with it is you may have seen, if you follow me on Twitter, not that long ago, like right before the NX reveal, I tweeted a set of pictures from a recent trip to Disney World where I made a joke where I spent the whole trip worried about the NX, and in each of the pictures I have sort of like a concerned look on my face. But what's actually happening there, and I wasn't going to say this, but now that I'm here, I should, is that in every single one of those pictures, I'm looking away from the camera on the ride or covering my face in some way because I don't want it to be in those pictures when I don't feel like I'm living up to what I want people to see me as. Like, I am intentionally hiding myself at every moment when I feel like there could be a record of my appearance. So like, yeah, I turned it into a joke and I can make it funny and like try to help me get over it. But like, that's what's really happening. So yeah, just another little thing I wanted to share. And yeah, thanks again for having me on here.
No, dude, absolutely.
It's really nice to hear other people's stories.
No, dude, it's always good to kind of find a group of people who share your pain and understand it. You know, it's one thing to talk about a friend who doesn't go through it, but it's a whole other beast to actually sit down with people who understand what you're going through and explain it to them and have it understood. You can't really replicate that. Flash, I know that you are. This is kind of an emerging thing for you. But I want to thank you for having the courage to come on and talk about it and talk about your fears and your struggles. It seriously, dude, it means a lot to us that you're here.
Yeah, no problem. Thanks for giving me the chance to give my 2 cents.
Absolutely, man. Absolutely. And I won't give a shameless plug for the podcast this weekend because I feel like given our topic that would be in poor taste. So if you want to find out what's going on this week, just check our Twitter feed, any of us, and you'll find it there. We're going to do this again next week. Some of these guys may be back if they want to come back, or maybe some of them don't. So we'll see. One thing I will remind our folks in chat, some of you who I know are suffering from anxiety yourselves, is that you can, if you need to talk, you can reach out to, I won't speak for anybody else here, but you can certainly reach out to me via DM on Twitter at Mr. Negative anytime you need to talk about something or want to ask a question about anxiety. It's something I've dealt with my entire life, so I'm well versed in it. I'm no therapist, but I can promise you that at least I'll listen. And I'll share my experiences with you. All you have to do is ask. My DMs are open if anybody wants to reach out to me. Don't be afraid. I don't bite. So yeah, this has been episode 1 of the Support Class podcast. You guys like that name, by the way?
Yeah.
Yeah,
Oh, yeah.
definitely.
Good.
I was hoping you guys did. Anybody pick up the white mage motif in the logo? I tweeted it out. Justin, you especially should go check it out. But yeah, Matt will probably be on. Matt, a member of the Superdeformed Gamescast, will probably be on next week to talk about his struggles with anxiety. Yep, there's more people on SDGC who are dealing with anxiety. It's not just me. Hopefully others will come on as well, because I know it's not just me and Matt. Although I will not time anybody out who doesn't want to be timed out. I feel like there was something else I wanted to say, but I don't know. Maybe it wasn't important enough. So who knows? I guess my mind kind of fucking shunted it to the back. But anyway, thanks to everybody for joining us and putting up with us. Very, very much appreciated. And we will see you guys next week. Thanks, everybody.
Yep.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you.